Hi everybody, welcome to Holy Week this week. It is Wednesday, not sure when you'll watch this, but it's kind of the peak of the week, but we have had such an incredible week. Man, we've been praying through this week and we just can't wait for the Seder meal tomorrow night and then Good Friday service. One of the things that over the years I've discovered with a lot of my friends, pastors, and other folks is candidly, some of them have struggled at times making Easter fresh. When you've preached the same resurrection message for 35 years, or you've done the same thing, you've walked through. It's like, well, how do you make this different? And something that I began years ago that I just want to give to you, and maybe just to practice it a little bit today, is a way to kind of bring back the freshness. And I will tell you, every time I do it, something different hits me. Remember when Jesus came to his disciples and he said, hey, come follow me, and I'm going to make you fishers of men? That phrase has always kind of struck me. And so I kind of received the same invitation from Jesus. Come follow me. What do I mean by that? Is every Easter Holy Week, for years, I don't know how many years, doesn't matter. For years, I've just walked the journey of Jesus. So on Sunday, yes, I've come into Jerusalem with him, and I've read on those. And one of the things that I would encourage you to do, it's just been so good for me, is to have moments where I just pause. And I kind of like let it sink down. I hit a wide spot in the road on each of these days. Here's been, over the years, some of my highlights. I'm always struck by betrayal. In particular, Judas's, yes, but also Peter's and the other disciples. The concept of betrayal is all through this last week. When Jesus is praying alone, when Peter does his, well-recorded denial of Jesus. I tend to think, I wish I would be different than Peter. I wish I would be different than all the other disciples. But I think I'm too realistic to realize I'd probably do the same thing they did. And I try and find my moment in that week where I own my own betrayal. Those times I have let Christ down. I think another one is the Last Supper. That happened just before, again, the arrests and all of the other things. You know what always gets me about the Last Supper? There's a lot of things about it, but I think it's the washing of feet. In particular, Judas's feet. I times beyond my ability to remember, wondered what it was like when Jesus looked up into the eyes of Judas. And I even wonder if Judas closed his eyes and looked away. That supper, that moment, that interchange between them, I've often paused in that room. When I was in Jerusalem with Carrie, and we were in an area that, they don't know where that occurred, and my guess is there's no structure at all that housed that event. But we were in a room, and we were just sitting there, and I paused and sat down and just kind of reenacted that event. I think what I'm trying to encourage us is like, slow this week down, slow this event down. Don't get to the resurrection before you go through betrayal, before you go through the Last Supper, before you go through the panic of Peter. I wish I was different than Peter. I'm not sure any of us would be. That moment where you realize you are giving up on your best friend, where you are lying, where you're trying to protect yourself. We've all been there. We've all felt that, the sadness of it. I often am struck, this is probably in my trip to Jerusalem, the place that got me maybe the deepest was Gethsemane, where they kind of think the Garden of Gethsemane was. This is a place that Jesus, the scripture says, often went out to pray, but this is the place where he battled the hardest. It says he literally bled drops of blood, and that's honestly where the battle most supremely was fought. I was reflecting this week on a quote from my dear mentor and friend, Haddon Robinson, who's now with Jesus. He said, for most of us, prayer is preparatory. For Jesus, it was the battle. And it wasn't before Pilate that he sweat drops of blood. It was in the garden. It was where he was praying. And the times where he came back to his disciples, they're sleeping. He goes back with his Father. And that surrender of his heart. I paused there. I leaned against a tree when I was there in Jerusalem and just thought, this is the place. This is where Jesus fought, I think, his greatest battle and gave him the strength he needed. I'll pause in that moment. That moment where Jesus said, yet not my will, but yours be done. That place where Jesus said, this is up to you, Father. This is not my story. This is our story. This is their redemption. One of the things that I've done over the years, and it has just become life-giving to me, is every year I walk myself through. Today's Wednesday. This is the day in the scriptures where there's a lot of inactivity, not a lot described, I should say. Tomorrow, huge day. It's the day of the Last Supper. It's the day, there's a lot going on tomorrow. And when you slow yourself down and you just pause, what you begin to feel is just this building and this authenticating the importance and the critical excitement of resurrection. I'm not sure you can appreciate it. My friend Haddon always used to say, you got to hold two things in your hand, depravity and grace. And if you don't hold depravity, then grace really doesn't mean anything. It's the same thing, I think, walking through this week with Jesus. If you see and feel the betrayal, and you see and feel the panic and all of that, and Peter's panic when he pulls out the sword and Christ's surrender there, then when we get to resurrection, we've tasted again our own betrayal, our own panic, our own self-protection. Oh, it's on that day where the resurrection becomes our life. There's something else I do. This is kind of crazy. I have certain things that I do annually. I have certain books, Contemplative Pastor by Eugene Peterson. I read through that. But there's also something I do, and that is there's a video. If you've ever heard the old story of It's Friday but Sunday's Coming, it's the story that Tony Campolo. I'm not endorsing all of his theology, so please don't send me emails on that one. But Tony has this one moment. He grew up and I think attended and preached in what would be considered a majority African American church. Tony's he was a professor at an Eastern Baptist school, and he was telling the story about how it's a preach-off. And so 5, 6 preachers would preach one after another. And it's kind of their fun way to preach a lot, but also to have this kind of competition. And Tony tells the story in this, It's Friday but Sunday's Coming, about him preaching. And he sits down and his pastor said, that was good, but you haven't seen anything yet. Every year I watch it. There's a number of different versions. The one I watch is 3 minutes, 34 seconds. It's just Tony telling the story again. I watch that. Why? Because it just simply inspires me. At the end of that tape, he talks about going out into this world and loving this world and serving this world because of the resurrection is true, it's real. I've already watched it once, maybe twice. I might get it 3 or 4 times. Why? Oh, it's just one of those beautiful 3-minute and 34-second moments where I'm just reminded again. A lot of us live in Friday. We live in that day of disappointment. We live in that day of fear. But the resurrection is a reminder Sunday's coming. And you always have to live with that in your heart. The best is yet to come. It has come. The resurrection has occurred. But really the best for you and I is it's down the road. It's when we're with Christ in heaven. And in that sense, we're living in Friday. We're living in Saturday. But Sunday's coming. Walk yourself through this journey. Find some things that you put into your heart that just stir you with thanksgiving. I can't wait to see you Friday night, 7 o'clock at the Good Friday service. Cannot wait to see you Saturday night at 6 o'clock. And remember, we're going to do service at 6. And what do you call breakfast and dinner when you put them together? Brinner? I have no idea. But that's going to be after the Saturday night service. And then Sunday, it's just fellowship and eating and resurrection power and glory and all kinds of things. Can't wait to see you. It's going to be a great weekend. We are expecting all kinds of people. And I am praying. One of my prayers for all of the churches in this city is that they would experience people who come, who haven't been invited. They simply have found themselves there because God drew them. That's one of my prayers for us and for every church in our city that loves Jesus. So come, ask around, help me see if God answers that prayer. I think God is gonna draw people to our church and to all the churches of our city. They didn't get invited. They weren't even planning on it. They just felt the urge of God drawing them because God is on the move of doing something in this crazy world that we live in. God is still on the throne. So it may be Friday where you're living, but Sunday's coming. Can't wait to see you this weekend. God bless you.